Okay, we've learned something today already. We've done a lot of these and many of you have been to them, but for me and my guest speakers in the future, I think we have to have theme songs as they come up. What do you think, Wes? Kurt? Yep? Okay. Well, we'll check on what your theme song might be, so maybe we qualify our speakers that way. Anyways, hi everybody, my name's Mike Stroll. I'm the CEO of NSS 360, and it is our team's privilege to have you all join us for another one of our ETEs. For those of you that have been to these before, I think you know what to expect, or at least I hope you do, and we always try and raise the bar every single year. For those of you that are here for your first time, we hope this is an experience that goes far beyond a good time, but one that really allows us to do what the term ETE allows or suggests we should do, which is Executive Technology Exchange. We have a great group of speakers tonight, but it goes well beyond this. It goes into the night when we have one of our spectacular dinners or post-event excursions with you guys. And one of the best parts about this is when we take some of the content that we talked about and get around the table and start sharing ideas together. I think this year more than any, this is probably one of the most important times for this type of event because so much is changing. The term digital transformation is one that's used by absolutely everybody in this industry to describe absolutely everything that they do. But the reality of it is business is changing. The role of IT is changing. There's somebody in this audience, actually he's not in this audience, but one of our speakers quoted him at one point in time, and he was talking about healthcare, and the quote was interesting. It was, IT is in the business of delivering healthcare. And I think I said that right. Close? Not even? Well, you can fix it when I get up there. Anyways, something like that. But the whole concept of delivering real services that go all the way to the stakeholders, which aren't just the people in your organizations, but the customers that use it, is one of the most exciting times to be in this business. Some of the things that we as an organization have invested in around digital transformation, both of the data center, the customer-facing services, and the workspaces, is what we're here to talk to you guys about today. And so I've been told in the past that I don't tell you what our goals are as NSS 360. You can read a lot about us if you would like in the stuff we have or on our website. But we are now providing customers with workshops around helping them transform their desktops into digital workspaces, whether they run in the cloud, they run in other locations, and we're building products and solutions around that. But more importantly, customers are asking us, how do we get there? Cloud is on everybody's mind, digital transformation's on everybody's mind, and the same thing goes around the core of digital transformation, whether you're looking at DevOps or big data. And we've got speakers here today to share some of these, their ideas, thoughts, experiences, and warnings maybe about these types of things. So, moving on, because I have a short time to get this thing started. Our first speaker, got to put these on. Kurt Romer, he is the Chief Security Strategist for Citrix Systems. As those of you that have been here before know, we've had many people from Citrix speak in the past, but in this world of transformation, while we're being challenged constantly by security challenges, I thought, and we thought, that this would be the best speaker we could possibly have from Citrix here to talk about both the transformation that we're all going through and how you strategize for security. As the Chief Security Strategist, Kurt leads security, compliance, risk, and privacy strategies for Citrix products. As a member of the Citrix CTO and Strategy Office, he drives ideation, innovation, and technical direction for products and solutions that advance business productivity while ensuring information governance. An information services veteran with more than 30 years experience, his credentials include the Certified Information Systems Security Professional designation. He also served as commissioner for the U.S. Public Sector Cloud 2 initiative and led efforts to develop the PCI Security Standards Council Virtualization Guidance Information Supplement while serving on the board of advisors. That's it? That's it. With that, everybody, I present Kurt.
Well, thanks. Welcome, everyone. Great to be here, and look forward to spending a little time talking about the future of work and really how to secure that. I know there's a lot of things that we can get into. We've got a very short amount of time and only 30 minutes, but I'll make sure you've got a copy of the materials. We've got a lot back behind this, some videos, other things that you can share with your organization to help you plan for the future of work. As Chief Security Strategist, I'm thinking 3 to 5 years out in the future, and maybe even more in some cases. And so a lot of what you're going to hear right now are some of the leading questions and some of the things that will help us think about what's going to be important moving forward. And I really struggle with being behind podiums, but I guess I can't move, so we'll see how this works here. So let's jump into it. When you take a look at what the options are for securing the future of work and really what needs to be done and what questions we need to ask, the questions need to range from not only the operational aspects that we're all facing today, but also things that are very inspirational. So we might have aspects that include how can we gauge and measure and report on trust? How can security be something that's more programmatic and has SLAs associated with it, service level agreements, KPIs, key performance indicators, and other metrics, so that security is not just something that people go, are you secure? Are you not secure? Yes, no, depends on who I'm talking to, right? But it's something you can actually measure. And more interesting, security is not just about technologies. When you talk about information security and cybersecurity, most people automatically jump to their favorite technologies, right? What's security really about? It's about positive outcomes. And it's about producing those outcomes and having decision points that you make when those outcomes are at risk. And that's really what security is all about. And we have to think about it in those terms. We've got autonomous cars right now. Why don't we have autonomous security? Why do we leave so much to the end user to be able to determine whether they're doing the right things or not in all the different situations they're working in? How can we make things easier? So we're going to go through and talk about some of these questions and really shape what the future of work should look like from a security perspective. For the agenda, a couple things we'll cover. This will be interesting here. So how the nature of the future of work is changing, what we should be focusing on, what we should be thinking about. And this is not just technology, these are not just business trends, these are geopolitical trends, these are social trends, these are other things that factor into how people work and what they're doing as they engage in our work practices and producing work product for us. We'll also need to take a look at some of the organizational barriers and how today's organization in many ways is getting in the way and what we can do to help facilitate that moving forward, or at least recognize it so that we can make it much less of a factor. Also, everybody's heard about the Internet of Things, right? You got these wearables that we all have, or many of us have, that can measure heart rate. There's a lot of other factors. You can walk into a building, lights can turn on, you can automate your home, you can speak to Alexa or OK Google. That was a test to see if anybody's got one turned on here. And basically automate much of your life. It's interesting. So the Internet of Things is really pushing the envelope from a security perspective too. Why? Any thoughts? Well, the Internet of Things has added another leg to the security stool. We've always had the triad of security, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. IoT adds one more, and that's safety. If you're not thinking of the safety aspects associated with the Internet of Things, as we have autonomous vehicles, as we automate rooms, as we automate healthcare facilities, patient rooms, patients themselves that are walking in pre-instrumented with technology, we've got a lot more to think about from a safety perspective and from overall security and privacy. And along with that, how can we use some of these new technologies, cloud, mobile, IoT, to affect better outcomes for security and make life much easier? Okay, sorry, I'm from a vendor. I have to mention these next couple things: artificial intelligence, machine learning. How many people have heard those from vendors throughout the last year? It's impossible to not hear those words from a vendor, right? And as a vendor, you have to bring them up every time. Well, I'm going to bring them up in a little different way, because many people take a look at artificial intelligence and machine learning as logging plus plus, and how can we take some of the info in the logs and make it a little more available, make it a little more interesting? How can we maybe show things in a different way? But who are they showing this off to? When vendors talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning, who are they benefiting? Think about it. You know what the answer is today. Who should they be benefiting? And we've got information that's available to help not just IT and not just the IT security organization, but the entire business, all of our relationships, how we work with each other, how we collaborate. These technologies will really help shape our world and give us a viewpoint that we've never had before, give us insights we've never had before, and show off some really cool things. And I'll get into some of that from a security perspective. So when we take a look at the situations people are working from, you've got people who are working from home, people who are working from airports, airplanes, they're coming in from coffee shops, they're on mobile devices. What do your policies at work allow for today from a security perspective? If you're still kind of oriented towards people coming into the office and don't do this if you're remote access, you know who you are. Probably time to update your policies a little bit, because you might be somewhat behind the curve. I got a video in here, we'll play that later. But when we look at the future of work, there's a lot of other things we have to accommodate. And one of the big things here is accommodating the millennials. You've heard of them, right? They're all of our kids. I've got 2 millennials as my kids. And millennials are born digital natives. They've never been without computers. They've never been without the internet and the ability to be online. They look at the world in a little different way than all of us do, because they've always had the ability to just look stuff up. I used to have to go to a library. I used to have to know the Dewey Decimal System and how to go through and actually find things in books. With many of the millennials, they don't open a book unless they're actually in school. They don't need to. And they can find things much faster, and they can find relationships faster. And they're better at working with information and sharing with each other. And that's fantastic. There's a lot that we can learn from them if you're, in the baby boomer generation like I am. But millennials, from a security perspective, also can cause some major issues. Why? Well, they like to very freely share information. And so when you see millennials who are programmers, oftentimes they're putting information on the programs they're writing and problems that they're trying to solve out on websites somewhere asking for help. Sounds good, right? Unless that snippet of code just happens to have some business logic in it that was very sensitive intellectual property for your company and something that you paid hundreds of millions of dollars to develop and never wanted to get out. Guess what? That new millennial you just hired exposed that to the world and your competitors. Pretty amazing. And they didn't do it for malicious reasons. They did it to try to help out. We've got to bridge the gap there and really help bring the millennials in and help make sure that they're benefiting security. And a big part of this is, how do we face all of the challenges that are out there? And I'll leave you to read a lot of these as the helicopters hopefully don't shoot at us. This could be fun. When you look at digital disruption, there are lots of events and lots of technologies and lots of issues and trends that are shaping our future right now. We've got to pay attention to those, and we've got to very dynamically adjust our security policies in order to take advantage of it. So I said we're going to take a look at security from an organizational perspective as well. Let's do that. From an organizational perspective, the theme here is more, more, more. So we've got end users. What do they want more of? Anybody? Everything, exactly. That's a good point. They want more technologies. They want the ability to work from anywhere. They want more agility. They want more flexibility. I had somebody yesterday say they want more time. All of us would like that. End users are really driving and shaping the future of computing and how we're working right now. Are they also shaping the future of security? Yeah, unfortunately they are. And so what they're demanding more of oftentimes is leaving security in their wake and causing some major problems. We also have IT. What does IT want more of? They want more control. They want more technologies. They want more policies. IT is basically out there to try to make our lives more difficult, right? That's why we work around them as end users and as people in organizations. And even as IT professionals, how many of us use all of our own systems, or do we bypass them whenever we possibly can so that we can get work done? Guess what? Everybody else is doing that too. We're not just the exception. We got to be really careful with this. And then the chief security officer, what do they want more of? This is an easy one. You ever been in a board meeting? They want more money, they want more people, and they want more control, right? They want more scope. So this is a challenge because today's security organization and today's organizational view is really at odds with each other. We need to bring them together a little bit more. In doing that, I saw this little quote. Now, this was from a Gartner conference in Sydney, Australia that I was presenting at a few weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago. It's the Gartner Security and Risk Management Conference. I never take pictures of slides. I never take pictures in conferences. I took this picture. I think you can see why. This really amazed me. And for those of you who can't see it real well, I'll read it. By 2022, in 60% of large enterprises, business units will select the level of risk and cost. Wow. Do you believe that? Are you working towards that? Should this even be a goal? Or is this something that's just going to happen to us? Yeah, should have been that way from the start. I agree, Wes. See, I can hear you up here. That's good. Wow. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when IT was developed, we owned all the systems. We built the servers, we built the networks, we owned the applications, we knew where all the data was, we controlled everything. Is that still the case? Business units probably know the computing better than we do. They definitely know the applications better than we do, and they absolutely know the data and the risks to them better than we do in most cases. So we need to partner with them a little bit better. And Citrix had commissioned a study along with the Ponemon Institute. Organizations see that their information's at risk because of complexity in the IT environment. We've made it too tough for people to get work done is the way I read that. 71% say that there's risk from their inability to control employees' devices and apps. Really? Is that still a thing? I thought a lot of people were just bypassing IT, using shadow IT and going directly to the cloud. So control over devices and apps, is that really something we can do? I guess we'll see. And that's why 74% say that there is a new security framework that's needed. I completely agree. Hopefully you do too, because that's what we're going to be talking about for a few minutes here. So let's look at what that new security framework would look like for securing the future of work. First of all, from a Citrix perspective, when we talk about security, we're talking about centralizing apps and data, using virtualization, making sure that the data never leaves the data center, core tenets of virtualization for years. If you don't distribute the data, if it's not on every device and every USB key and everybody's enterprise file sync and share system out there, you have a little better control over it, don't you? Likewise, if you do have data that has to be mobilized, you can keep it in an enclave so that the applications, the data, the policies associated with the enterprise, they go on the mobile devices and they can be distributed, but they're managed by the organization. And that's got a side benefit for those of us as end users because it helps protect our privacy. Both of these things help maintain separation for people who are running their own systems. In a virtual world, if the data never hits your endpoint doesn't have to be in scope for things like forensics and e-discovery if it hits the fan. And similarly, from a containerization perspective, if you're doing this from a container perspective and not trying to manage somebody's device, you don't have IT going through there and saying, hey, it's 2 a.m., I'm bored, I'm going to go look and see what pictures people have on their devices, which, by the way, they can do if they manage your device. It's kind of scary. Policies as well have to be contextually aware. And what contextual awareness means is all the different devices, all the different situations, all the different work locations, what I like to call the 5 W's of access, the who, what, when, where, and why, are accommodated for every time you go in and try to access a new resource. And so you're not just saying, hey, you logged in, you can get to whatever you need. You're going through and vetting the situation and determining what security needs to be in place. So you're making it really easy for people to get access to public data, and you're making it increasingly more difficult as they step up the risk and as they're approaching transactions that could impact materially the entire organization, or maybe they crossed a threshold for things like a $10,000 transaction that they're approving. And then also from an analytics and insight behavior, let's make sure that we're utilizing this information to hit the business. So let's talk a little bit about that. Architecture slide, you can look at this later. I'll skip this, but basically it's no longer one perimeter. You need to constantly be redefining the perimeter for protecting data. And it's what we call the software-defined perimeter. We're making it programmatic so that it's something that can constantly be fluid so that it matches your needs and matches against the threats. Many different security initiatives that you need to be concerned about and be protecting against. These are all things that you can go back and walk through each of these and say, how are we handling this? And how are we handling this not just from an IT perspective, but also with our virtual supply chain, all of our partners, as well as the business units that we support. Okay, let's get into the meat of this a little bit. How many people are familiar with the NIST cybersecurity framework? Awesome, awesome. The majority of the folks, that's great. So you've got these core tenets: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And I love NIST's definition here. These are performed continuously and concurrently. These are not things that are just done at login. They're done all the time because situations are constantly changing. And they're done in terms of an operational culture. Oh, this isn't IT's responsibility, this is everybody's? That's awesome. And it addresses our dynamic security risk. So if this is done across the organization, you should be able to walk into any business unit and walk up to the business unit leader and say, what are your plans for respond and recover from a cybersecurity perspective? What do you think they'd say? They go, that's easy, that's IT's problem, right? They would say that today in many cases, but can they, should they? Is it still really IT's problem? In the nature of our cybersecurity incidents has gotten to the point where it is affecting the business. And when people look at some of the practices that have been in place from an IT perspective, we had patch management for years where we would not go through and patch systems until a certain amount of time has passed so that, those patches didn't impact the business. We didn't want to have any downtime. Well, take a look at the attacks of this year, namely things like WannaCry, NotPetya. Take a look at what happened with the Apache Struts vulnerability with Equifax. These were businesses that were materially impacted and had to report in their financials and through the SEC sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars of material impact. Why? Because of their IT patch management practices. Guess what? I bet those are being changed now. What do you think? So yes, we have to work together on this, and this is a big example. Now, for each of these, I have examples of things that you'll want to go through and take a look at. In the interest of time, we're not going to be able to run through all of these, but suffice it to say, if you're virtualizing, containerizing your data, you've got contextual policies, it makes it a lot easier to address each one of these. And also from a AI and ML perspective, keep in mind that you can go through and have the system, as people are accessing each different application, each desktop, each data element, AI and ML can go through and be able to determine not only who's doing what, but what relationships are out there. How are people working together? How are they sharing and collaborating data? Who's being most efficient at it? Who needs some remedial training? Who's got the best practices that the rest of the organization should be learning from? Remember that machine learning is basically telling you what the new normal is and telling you where anomalies are. It's learning what normal behavior is all about and what should be happening, and then it can make some recommendations based on that. Artificial intelligence is giving you completely new insights, and if it's not, you don't have it focused right. If it's just helping you answer questions you already have today, that's not artificial intelligence. So keep that in mind as you design the systems. From a protect perspective, one thing that I'd like to highlight here is that when you have all these different users and all these different endpoints and access to all the applications, each one of them can act as a beacon that can be crowdsourced to help identify what's going on out there from a data and cybersecurity perspective, but also how to best protect it. They know who's using what applications, what data, what's being shared, what's normal for the role, what's normal for that particular time period. And so you get a new idea of what's going on within the organization. It can also go through and say, hey, every quarter you've got a particular VP of a business unit that is accepting some risk that they really shouldn't be, because that risk is not 100% theirs, and there's some other mitigations that they could have done to be able to protect against that risk. But today, they're just blindly accepting it. So we can go through and be able to make some recommendations based on those systems. From a detection perspective, let's make sure that we've got visibility all throughout the virtual supply chain. All the applications we're using, the open source that it might contain, and so we have an understanding of what our threat landscape looks like that's very, very specific to access and specific to our uses of the system, and dynamically addresses some of the nature of the business and how it's changing. So we have the ability to detect both acute and chronic incidents, and we're looking at them not just from a single actor perspective, but we're also looking at them in terms of collusion. So if you did have people that were coming together, or nation states that have a very coordinated attack against across multiple sources, you're able to pull that together in ways that you otherwise would not be able to pull out of the logs. And there's one other thing that I want to highlight in terms of the ability to detect. So anybody who's been hit by WannaCry, NotPetya, something like that, the ransomware attacks, if you have, what do you do to be able to detect that? You know, people call in, say, hey, should I pay the fine or not? What should happen there? Yeah, you're detecting it, and then how do you go through and remediate against it once those events happen? Backups, rollback and recovery. Well, one thing that you might want to consider there as well is this is a successful attack against those endpoints or servers. And it may not be just against that data and that data that was backed up. You might have a secondary infection, and we've seen those where the operating system has been impacted and has been compromised. We've even seen firmware-based attacks where the firmware has been compromised. Guess what? Your root of trust is completely changed. And if your response to ransomware has just been roll back and recover, and you've got certificates on that particular server, those are roots of trust you should go through and be able to reissue your certs. If you haven't, you're going to want to go back and take a look at that. And that's part of the ability to respond. Make sure that as you're responding, the business is working with you and you're looking at your response processes, doing these in accordance with a plan, but also having artificial intelligence and machine learning go back and recommend what could have been done better, what risks were accepted that shouldn't have been, i.e. the bad patching process, and how things can be enhanced moving forward. And from a recovery perspective, make sure that your recovery is completely prioritized and that you're focusing on increasing your resilience over time. Like I said, I could probably spend an hour on each of those 5. We don't have time for that right now. We can talk about that at a later date. I'm going to leave you with a few key questions as you take a look at designing your new architecture for the future of work. The first is, what's your cloud endpoint strategy? When people go directly to the cloud, things like the browser are more in scope than ever. And I don't know about you, but when I look at the browser as being the primary security tool, that scares the hell out of me. The browser was the worst piece of software on any endpoint for years and may still be, especially when you combine things like Flash and Silverlight and Java and all these other extensions and interfaces with the system. If you don't have a cloud endpoint strategy, make sure you develop one. The second one is, how do you make sure that your most sensitive data stays within project teams? So if you've got a top secret M&A project you're working on, you've got something that you're working on that involves intellectual property, you've got some strategic plans for the business, for the board, make sure that those are staying within that team. And even if somebody accidentally or on purpose or gets hacked and tries to send that document out to somebody else, the attacker would receive the document, but the document's encrypted. They don't have the authorization to go ahead and bypass the encryption. They're not able to open it, and they get nothing. Very, very simple to do today. And if you're not doing that for your most sensitive data, you want to think about it. Information rights management helps quite a bit there. Look at all the different situations people are working in and how they work. Remember the millennials. And design around the 5 W's of access so that you're considering not just what device people are getting in from and whether it's a trusted device or not. It's more what should this user device and the entire combo of their situation be trusted to do. Next, how can you actually leverage IoT services for enhancing both security and physical privacy and enhancing safety? IoT brings a lot to the table, and there's quite a bit that we can be utilizing here, from authentication factors to bridging the gap between physical and cyber, and that's really what IoT is going to be involved with. And then last, and my absolute favorite question, how and to what extent can primary data responsibilities be moved from IT to business units so that the people who have direct authority for that data and for accepting and mitigating those risks are making those decisions? And how can all of us within IT and IT security help them do that and help to be the trusted advisors to take this into the next level? I'll leave you with some key takeaways, and with that, I want to say thank you very much. This looks like it's going to be an awesome event. This is my first year, so help me out. Thanks.
How many people in this audience either are from now, or, well, not now, but are or have ever been from Seattle in particular? 1, 2, 3. I see a bunch of hands back there. I owe you all an apology. See, until this last weekend, I had this attitude towards people in Seattle. I just figured, you people just don't listen. You don't. And I just thought it was a Northwest thing or whatever else, but then I got to go to my first Seattle Seahawks game on Sunday, and I realized it's not that you don't listen, it's after you go to one of those games, you can never hear anything again. So I apologize. That being said, our next speaker, Wes Wright, is the VP and Chief Technology Officer for Sutter Health. Wes joined Sutter as Chief Technology Officer in 2015. He is responsible for the strategic direction and day-to-day operations and the delivery of all technology for Sutter Health, a Northern California healthcare system including 26 hospitals, a network of over 5,000 physicians and more than 50,000 employees, and no corporate politics. Wes began his career as I didn't know this one, Korean linguist for the United States Air Force and retired after 20 years of service as a major in the Medical Service Corps. During this military tenure, his role included Executive Officer for the Air Force Surgeon General, Region Chief Information Officer for the Pacific Air Forces, and a CIO and CTO for David Grant Medical Center, the second largest medical center in the U.S. Air Force. Serving his country, thank you very much, in these roles shaped his leadership principles and guides his decisions to the day. Prior to joining Sutter, Wes served as CIO of Seattle Children's Hospital Research Institute and Foundation in Washington. Before his time in Seattle, which now I understand a little better, Wes served as the CIO IT COO for Scripps Health in San Diego, California. More importantly, we've been on what we might call digital disruption journey with Wes and Sutter and his entire team, and I'm excited to introduce him today, Wes Wright.
It just twirls. It doesn't come out. Oh, look at there. Nothing bad happened, Mike. I feel after after Kurt, I got a Phil Romer that works for me. After Kurt did his presentation, I just kind of feel that it's better if I just do it from down here, because you guys can see me still, right? This is my first time giving this presentation, so if you have any comments, let me know. So digital transformation, it's all the rage. I did not know we'd have so many orange people walking around in shirts that have digital transformation. So a little bit about Sutter Health. I'll let you read this slide while I tell you a little bit about myself. And Kurt, I have to warn you, this is the third time, I believe, I've done a presentation at ETE. 2 years ago, I followed Mark Templeton. Last year, I followed Klaus, both of who have left the company since then. So Kurt, just giving you a little warning. The quote, let's clean up the quote there, Mike. So I had a CIO that I've worked with in a couple, 2 or 3 different locations. When we were at Scripps Health, during a board meeting, he said, look, you guys went to sleep thinking you're a healthcare company, and you woke up and realized that you're an IT company that does healthcare. Personally, I thought I would a shoe-in for the CIO job right then. But he survived that, and I was still the CTO. So, every presentation I give, this slide is a part of it. It seems particularly poignant this weekend, since we have the LA Rams and the Seattle Seahawks playing. Can we get a Go Hawks? C. There we go. Every presentation I've done, I've put that slide in there, and inevitably, we get a Hawks coming out of it. So on to... That wasn't nice, whoever said that. So on to digital disruption. I tried to, being from California, Sacramento, I tried to think of an earthquake analogy for digital disruption, and it just does not work. Instead, we've got a hurricane analogy for digital disruption. The closer you are to the center, everything is being pulled into the center. Everything is going to be digitally disrupted. The next slide will tell you why. I'm particularly, of course, concerned about the healthcare arena. I'm still out on the outer bands. You'll notice a lot of bands have been pulled closer and closer to the eye. And why is that? Because we're changing so quickly. This is one of my favorite slides. In 2005, we had Pope Benedict, what are they, inaugurated? What is that called? Some Catholics help me out here. Ordained. What? Ordained. Ordained, there we go. And then in 2013, look at what happens. That's only 8 years, folks. It's only 8 years between that and this. Healthcare, and again, my focus is on healthcare, it's an anachronism. We have closed data systems. I'm trying to keep this out of the wind. We lack the interoperability that everything else has. And most importantly, and I think what's going to be our Achilles heel, I'm trying to move around here. What's going to be our Achilles heel is, unlike every other industry, our industry is based around the supplier, not around the customer. And that's what healthcare has to do, is shift our focus from around us to around the consumer. We'll see if we can do it. And we have to do it because not only is there a digital disruption, there's a demographic disruption. This is one of the slides that has impacted me the most in the last month, I say. Look at how the millennials, the Gen X's, and whatever we're going to call the people who are before the millennials. Do we have a name for them yet? Anybody know? Huh? Zennials with a Z? Yeah. I'm a boomer. This is why we're going to be digitally disrupted. All these people from the Gen X people onto the left, they've grown up with technology. They've grown up with a phone in their hand. This is the normal digital disruption side that everybody shows. We went from Blockbuster to the Red Box, and now it's all streaming online. Uber left, Whole Foods. Talk about disruption. Whole Foods, Amazon. Let's see what happens there. Expectations are changing. I hope you can see these balloons in the back above these people. You got a 22-year-old that says, yeah, I drive all the time, but I don't have a license. Yeah, you can do that in today's society. Call up an Uber or Lyft, you can go wherever you want to. I never go to the doctor, but I see my doctor every week. Sure. I don't want to feel like I have a disease, but I need to manage my diabetes. Here's the one that gets me a lot. I'm always shopping, but never in a store. Can't pass up those Amazon deal of the days, can you? I can't. About disruption, this was actually last week I was at a Microsoft Ignite, and in Satya's his keynote address that he did, he had this exact same slide. Coincidental? I don't think so. That is that we completely overestimate the change that's going to occur in the near term, and completely underestimate the change that's going to occur in the long run. Within healthcare, there's been 7 things that have been identified that may potentially, I personally, Wes Wright, don't think that these are going to change healthcare, but this has been identified by Forbes Technology Council as 7 potential innovations that might change healthcare. Why are we getting all these innovations? Look at the funding that's coming into healthcare. Being in Sacramento, just outside of Silicon Valley, really, really aware of all the funding that's going into healthcare and all the funded companies that are lying dead along the side of the road, because healthcare is not easy. Here's some of the digital disruption that's happening within healthcare. I'll call out EPT. You can see it on the slide, the early pregnancy test. So you do the early pregnancy test. If you buy the digital version and you get it all signed up the way you need to get it signed up, when you take the test, it fires off digitally something to the EPT people. EPT people automatically fire something off digitally to your OB provider, and automatically you get a script for your prenatal vitamins to start. That eliminates, in the healthcare industry, that eliminates at minimum 1 appointment for us. 1 appointment is $180. Do that for every time everybody does a pregnancy test. All of a sudden, our industry has changed. It used to be, in 2 different respects here, build it and they will come. That used to be a naughty saying. In healthcare, it was used to define hospitals. We need to build a hospital here. If we build a hospital, we'll fill the beds. In the last 5 years, the build it, they will come, the build it, they will come has been poo-pooed. From a technology perspective, I think we should do this. That's what everybody outside of healthcare does. Everybody builds it and hopes that they will come. In healthcare, we do not do this. This is one of my favorite slides in the whole world. It's a little complicated, so I've done it like 3 times. It's not that complicated. Cost is on the left, and level of complexity of care is on the right. What we have to do as we digitally disrupt is have more things in the green and the purple circles, green, purple, and blue. Right now, what we do with healthcare, we are way out. I feel bad calling it healthcare because it's not healthcare. It's sick care. That's what we provide. The U.S. health system right now provides sick care. That's what we provide. We have to move to prediction and provisioning, or prevention of care. That moves, at this slide, it moves the cost, the complexity and the cost is moved to the left. That's how we have to digitally disrupt healthcare. In healthcare, we know, or we're starting to talk about, that we can be eBayed or Amazoned just like everybody else. Tangent. As an aside, I have a really good idea on how to eBay and Amazon healthcare, but I'll talk about that later. In healthcare right now, we are on the verge of being eBayed and Amazon. So the stuff that you see on the left, that used to be done only in medical facilities up until about 5 years ago. Now people are realizing the stuff on, your left. The stuff on your left actually makes a lot of money. We used to use the stuff on the left to pay for the stuff that didn't make money. So it was a wash for us. But then people started figuring out that the stuff on the left makes money, and they started standing up. Cosmetic surgery centers, radiation oncology centers, not even attached to a hospital. So what's happening is the health system, the U.S. health system that, remember, is sick care, is the infrastructure within your health system, the hospitals and so on and so forth, the things that made them viable, the things that paid for those hospitals to be there are being cannibalized? No, that would mean that we did it. They're being siphoned off by because they're profitable. All the profitable pieces of healthcare that could be done outside of a hospital are being siphoned out of hospital. That's disruption. And how we can disrupt healthcare, the answers are out there. Service, USAA, Choice, Netflix. Anyhow, I'll let you read this slide. In digital transformation, nothing prompts evolution more than extinction. And I believe that right now, we are on the precipice of the U.S. healthcare system as we know it becoming extinct. So this is the normal in closing slide. I've listened to like 14 different digital transformation presentations over the last 6-8 months, and they all stop right here. And if you're doing a digital transformation presentation with any of your peers or your work group or your board, don't stop right here. They don't want you to stop right here. So you've told them that you're going to be digitally disrupted and that you might be Amazon or eBay, and that's where you stop. That's not where you stop. That's where I've seen everybody else stop. What you have to do is, so I've told you all this bad news, what are we going to do about it? So what do you do? If you want to digitally transform, what do you do? It seems ironic, but the first thing you do is go back and get your blocking and tackling, your fundamentals down pat. Then you start your digital transformation. I don't care where you start, I don't care how you start, just start. Get something moving, and then get agile. Sutter Health, 35,000 on-prem applications. 35,000 total applications. 17,000 on-prem, 18,000 SaaS. I can't be agile when I have 35,000 applications. We've got to get that number down. We are getting that number down. You have to get that number down. If you want to digitally transform, the first thing that you have to do is get agile. You can't get agile when you're hauling a bag full of applications behind you. And then embrace the future. A lot of your engineers, mostly engineers, they don't want to move to the cloud. It takes the hardness out of it. It's not hard anymore. When you want to provision a server in Azure, at least when we want to provision a server in Azure, it takes like 20 seconds. Your engineers don't like that because it used to take them like 2 days. So help them embrace the future. Help them understand, yeah, you may not be building servers anymore, which was stupid work for you to be doing anyhow. Instead, go over here and do this hard work. Anybody who's done lean before, Sean, will understand, automate the 80% that is stupid so that you can spend your time on the 20% that's hard. So what we've done at Sutter, realizing that digital transformation is happening, and to give you an update for folks that I may have briefed this to before, we've outsourced our back-end support for all of our Citrix stuff to Intersys 360. Mostly because I have a finite amount of resources. I want that finite amount of engineering resources not concentrated on the day-to-day operations, but more concentrated on where we need to go. So I've taken my engineering resources and said, no, I don't want those engineering resources supporting the back end of my infrastructure. I know that I can get Intersys to do that for much cheaper than I can hire FTEs. I'll let them support the back end of the infrastructure and let my engineers start thinking about innovation. I'm a big proponent of PCs suck. So I have virtualized, over the last year, we virtualized 11 of our hospitals. I still got another 17 to go that will get done this year. Virtualization, virtualize everything you can. With virtualization comes agility. Move to the cloud. Healthcare has been recalcitrant about moving to the cloud. No more. At least at Sutter Health, no more. Some of my peers still have some false pride that they do security better than Microsoft does. Very false pride, by the way. We started our journey to the cloud about 1.5 years ago. We moved everybody to Office 365. Everybody, meaning 70,000 clinical and business partners, in a quarter. Just because we had to. We were that far behind. It's taken us 1.5 years to move all of our 70,000 clinical and business partners to Exchange Online and get all of their archives and stuff up in the cloud. What's that do for me? My feet are no longer stuck in the mud. Now, instead of controlling devices and machines, I'm controlling users, I'm controlling software. Get agile in order to survive the digital transformation. And embrace the future. A part of the way that you can embrace the future is stop working on the stuff from the past. Win 10 Creators Edition is out this month. I've stopped all engineering on anything but Win 10 Creators Edition. Leave that stuff behind. Leave your legacy behind. Just get out of it. In the change environment, you've got these 5 levers: relocate, combine, subtract, add, and separate. I've seen this slide many, many times. My boss just briefed me this slide last week. It's bullshit. Speed has value. Go fast to go fast. This is this is my favorite slide. Up on the top, that's regular IT. Down on the bottom, that's new IT. Up on the top, you came to me, gave me some requirements, I fiddled around with it, went back to you, asked for some more requirements, fiddled around with it. You're never happy throughout the whole process. 18 months later, I produce you the best MySpace page in the world. But we're living in a Facebook world, aren't we? So even after 18 months, you're still pissed at me. Instead, let's start with a skateboard. You come to me and say, hey, Wes, I'm having a hard time getting from here to there. Yeah, here, let me give you that skateboard. Ah, I love that. That's great. Come back to me a month later. Hey, Wes, love the skateboard. I'm getting there back and forth a lot faster. Keep falling off, though. Very clumsy. Well, let me give you some handles. Got a scooter. Value at every step of the process. Hey, Wes, love the handles. Not falling off anymore. Too slow, though. I'll give you a bike. That's the way digital transformation happens. If you are still doing waterfall projects, too bad, because you're going to get overrun. Within technical services, where I work and Sutter Health, this is our mantra. So we call it QS4, quality. For us, it's the IHI definition of 6 things of quality: affordability, efficiency, accessibility, so on and so forth. Use this in your environment. Quality, whatever quality means to you. I don't care what environment you're at. What supports your quality is stability. Your apps have to be stable, period. And it works in this order, by the way. Stability, and then security, and then speed. And when I say speed, it's not just speed of compute or speed of the compute operation. It's speed to delivery. Back to the other slide. If you're going to support quality in the digital transformation age, you have to be a lot faster to your delivery than you have been now. I don't care who you are. You still have to be faster than you are now. And of course, all stability, security, and speed, all built on a foundation of simplicity. Because we all know the simpler you can make things, the more stable you can make them, the more secure you can make them, and the faster you can make them. So there's turbulence ahead. Digital transformation is not going to come easy. Believe me, I'm taking tons of grief at Sutter Health right now. Tons of grief. Because you can't make a 70,000 user organization convert to Office 365 in a quarter and not have a lot of people that are pissed off at you. You can't move everybody's email to the cloud in a year and a half and not have people pissed off at you. Maybe I need to put a people are going to get pissed off at you slide in here on the digital transformation, because that's going to happen. Just believe that you're doing the right thing, because you, everybody here, see the digital transformation coming a lot more clearly than whatever customer you serve, because it's your job to see that transformation coming. So, as Bill Belichick would say, do your job. That's it.
Okay, everybody, the next part of our presentation is a panel around digital transformation. I have longer intros of each of these guys, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves in the interest of time. So starting with Gary.
After last year, I'm not touching the bottom of the microphone. My name is Gary Burgle. I'm the regional CTO for Hewlett Packard Enterprise. I'm responsible for all the product lines across the Americas.
Hi, Vinay Nichani here. I lead software sales globally for Cisco. Live in Irvine, Southern California, born and bred. Thanks.
Doge Willie, CEO of Zentors. We're a digital transformation company focused on DevOps, cloud, and big data. And we are helping Ensys 360 build their digital transformation practice.
Al Solorzano, practice manager for end user computing at Ensys 360. Woo! By the way, I have no idea how my bio got so long on that in the agenda, so that's long.
Hello again, everyone. Kurt Rover, Chief Security Strategist for Citrix.
Awesome, thanks guys. So to kick it off, Anoj, there have been a lot of companies that have used a lift and shift approach to go into the public cloud. What are the issues with that, and how does a hybrid cloud DevOps approach help with that?
Okay, so when we see folks going into a hybrid cloud approach or even a public cloud approach, you sort of see them in 3 phases. And the first phase is, hey, like you mentioned, Mike, how do I lift and shift? How do I move some applications? And they're sort of experimenting in the cloud. So from that perspective, when you're in that stage 1, we really emphasize taking an application-centric approach, understanding what the applications look like, how they interact, and the complexities around that, and then sort of experimenting in AWS or Azure or your cloud of choice, and then starting that migration. When you get to the second stage, though, and this is where we're seeing a lot of companies today, is they've already gone heavily into the cloud. They've already tried a bunch of stuff in AWS and Azure, but now they're looking at things like cost optimization, and they're looking at other things as like, how do I service my customer, right? A service provider, I talk about it, has a different mentality than an enterprise. A service provider is like Taco Bell, for instance. You go to Taco Bell and say, hey, I want burgers. They say, no, sorry, we don't do that, right? You go to Wendy's for burgers. When you're an enterprise, you can't do that. It's almost like you're inviting people over for dinner. You can't say, hey, we're serving steak. Sorry, you're a vegetarian. You don't get to eat, right? So you have to kind of solve it for them. But there's a mix there in the middle where you have to figure out what model is best for your company. The third phase, where we see actually the most advanced companies, we're helping companies today, is when companies really get to this idea called cost to serve, this technology business management. So I'm really out of the business of operating servers and things like that, and what I really want to find out is how much does it cost to launch this service? Like if you put a workload in Amazon, you can say, hey, this thing is costing me $10,000 a month. How much value am I getting for that? You can make that equation, that analysis. If you go to an IT director and you say, how much does it cost to onboard a user? They're like, gosh, I don't know, it depends, right? So we've got to move past that. One of the best examples I can give is LinkedIn. Actually, they know how much a specific profile costs. They will tell you it's $17 a year for every profile they hold. So if you go to them to sell them some kind of technology, they're going to ask you, how does your technology help me lower my cost to serve? And actually, Cisco's doing a really good job with that as well. They've kind of consolidated their data centers under Sidney Morgan, and they're doing a phenomenal job around that cost to serve and that understanding.
Vinay, how is Cisco, speaking of which, using outcome-based solutions approach to help customers on this journey?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? We've seen a definite shift in IT, to Anoj's point, to that focus on outcomes. And I think that's where, it starts with, and this is a bigger conversation on digitization that we're going to get to, it starts with understanding your customer's customer, right? And how are they engaging with those customers, and how are they using digitization to drive a shift in that interaction, to drive more value interaction as one side of it, and on the other side of it, how are they using technology to get more efficient from an operational perspective? From there, the common threads you're usually going to find in that are that, and it's the same thing that drives cloud, is we want more simplicity, more flexibility, more speed. And so from a technology perspective, when you look across architectures, what we're fundamentally doing, the common thread, is building more agile platforms for digitization, right? Whether you talk about the digital network architecture on campus routing and switching and how we deliver more automation and analytics at scale, at speed for infrastructure, whether you go into the data center and talk about what we're doing with some of our advanced applications to more easily manage workloads between clouds, to more easily automate how you do those manual tasks, or in the security space where so much of it is built on cloud-based machine intelligence analytics to recognize and respond to threats in an automated way. Take the manual process out of it so you can fundamentally be more agile in delivering those outcomes.
Just as part of the rules of engagement here, if anybody else wants to add in before I move on to the next question.
I think everybody owes $1 every time they say agile. Just saying.
So what am I at, 20?
I already told Tom this was coming, so. Okay, since you spoke up, I'm picking on you next. Al, at Enesys, we have developed hybrid cloud, VDI, or digital workspace solutions. What challenges have customers faced, and how are we overcoming them?
So first thing, just so everybody knows, the Workspace Cloud offering that NSP has built is really designed to deliver desktops as a service with a full managed service. I think that's a key differentiator. I think what we're seeing for a lot of the DaaS offerings that are out there today, what they're missing is the key components of flexibility and the components of managed services. So real quick, flexibility. Our solution is designed to run on any cloud that you may have, whether that's a public, private, or a hybrid model. This also integrates with the Citrix solutions and their stack, along with a lot of other components, to make sure that they deliver a fully capable solution that's pretty flexible, whether you want to have it in your data center or somebody else's data center, or you just want to have a colo offering. So there's definitely a flexible solution there. And then the managed services. I think that's a big key piece. Most of the DaaS solutions will go ahead and say, here's your desktop, and that's it, right? It's up to you as IT to go ahead and figure out, well, how do I get my applications installed? How do I deliver the profile management component? So our managed services offering, which has been running for quite some time now, has go ahead and deliver that for Sutter and for others, but is actually part of our solution to deliver a much better experience.
But does it help you be more agile?
Absolutely.
You all. Remember, I own the seating chart for tonight. Kurt, there's been a lot of changes at Citrix lately. Talk a little bit about Citrix's philosophy on the cloud and where they think customers are going. And then if they're there, we all know you access through a browser, and since you're owning the security side of it, what your thoughts are around all that.
Yeah, thanks. In terms of Citrix, we're definitely pivoting very heavily to cloud. We're hearing loud and clear from our customers that they've got a lot of the on-premises solutions solved, and as they're moving into Windows 10 Creators Edition and others, they want to be able to deliver those to a more simplified endpoint, and they want to simplify the back-end services as well by putting them in the cloud, being able to subscribe to it as a service, and being able to deliver that across the world. Now, on-premises still needs to be there as well. There are a lot of solutions that need to be able to run disconnected from the internet and would not be worthy of putting out in the cloud at this point in time. So we need to be able to support both. And in terms of publishing applications, desktops, being able to publish data out there, we also have to keep in mind that we're focusing now more on workspaces. And a workspace is not just a desktop. A desktop can be a workspace, but workspaces are going to continue to evolve so that they're more of how we work, how we produce our work products, how we do things. And instead of you coming in the morning and having to open certain apps and go out and search for certain news or certain data, your workspace is really going to present to you those things that are most relevant. And it's going to learn from you over time what you're interested in, what you should be interested in, because some of us have picked up bad habits over the years, and help to recommend more of what we need to do to be more productive and more secure. And that concept of workspaces is something that we all need to be playing out much more.
I'm sorry. How many people believe that their on-premises solution fully working embedded? Right. I think what I'm seeing from a lot of our customers these days is they're looking at the cloud as trying to fix the problem. Right. They're just shove everything out there, like we talked about the lift and shift. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think what's happening is the hybrid model, right, where they want to figure out where things make sense. And so I think that's really where we're trying to see our focus on.
Yeah, that's definitely a factor here. What we're seeing, though, as well, is there are a lot of businesses that are going, hey, I'm having a really hard time finding the talent to build and manage this and secure this. And it really doesn't make sense for me to invest in that anymore because I'm not an infrastructure services company. I need somebody to be doing that for us. And that's where Enesys comes into play, and that's where some companies are just going direct to cloud for their solutions, particularly some of the SMBs as well. And you see that with Amazon Workspaces and other products out there. We're going to have a lot of things we're dealing with, and remember, we'll be integrating those from an M&A perspective as we acquire different companies and divest and work with different organizations. So there will be a myriad and quite a diversity of solutions out there. I think you also had a question about the browser. From a browser perspective, we've got a lot of resources on being able to secure the published and hosted browser and how you should be thinking about the endpoint browser security, where a hosted browser comes into play, and being able to do that for consistency, being able to do that to be much more specific to the needs of an application, locking it down to only the plugins that are needed, only the domains that it should be communicating with. But one other huge use case there is if you have anybody who is a privileged user or an admin, make sure that you're publishing browsers for them. So your admin doesn't go in with their domain joined laptop, connect up to the network, go out on Facebook, their personal email, and be connected to all your company systems across the domain and have something bad happen to them. Your admins need to be more segmented and isolated, particularly by publishing browsers, than probably anybody else in the organization. Any disagreement there?
So just to go back to one of the main tenets for today, it's for us, everybody knows we can install, design, support Citrix systems, but for our customers now, a major part of what our focus is isn't convincing you to go to the cloud, but helping you figure out that journey, and to Wes's point, helping you get started.
Yeah, and it's kind of where cloud makes sense, because it doesn't make sense in all cases, absolutely. But where it does make sense, it can be the lowest cost, highest performing option, and as Wes had hinted to before, definitely brings some security options that many businesses cannot afford. The security teams that are saying, I can do this better than everybody else, there are a few of those out there. Those are few and far between these days.
Okay, so moving along, Gary. You ready? All right. With developments like composable infrastructure and HP Synergy, how is HPE creating platforms that change the way we compute and support the things we're talking about?
So first of all, the HPE swear jar is nimble, synergy, and agile. And so we bought Nimble and we built Synergy. So my swear jar is pretty big in that regard. So as we were starting to look at what the next generation of technology was, obviously if you look at HPE right now, we've kind of done a lot of work to make ourselves more nimble. See, there it is. And as we were looking at what the market was going to be, we started looking at what the next generation architectures were. We started with a project called The Machine, which is around memory-based compute versus compute leading to memory. And then we decided we were going to start to build a more flexible infrastructure that could be delivered with a single line of code. That was the underlying principle behind when we built Synergy. And we knew that from our own dealing with the cloud, fun fact, we used to have 128 instances of PeopleSoft. Now we have 1 instance of Workday. Right? So as we were building these environments out, we experienced the same pain all our customers did. And so we wanted to deliver a system that would allow us to expand the performance on the fly, change the configurations on the fly, but also lead to what the machine promises, which is we do a lot with DreamWorks as an example. They manage to the core. So they run an average of 25,000 cores at a given time, but they need to scale 10,000 cores up and down depending on what they're doing. We want to be able to be the flexible engine that provides that capability, but make it easy to use. And then on top of everything else, provide customer choice. So if you look at the divestitures we've done around our software division and things like that, it doesn't matter which one of the platforms you choose as your on-site solution. We're going to work with you on that. It won't matter what that is because we share a common API. So we're trying to make the experience as simple as possible and bring customer choice back to one vendor not owning every single piece of the equation, but actually partnering well with all of them.
Awesome. Great. Vinay, what new licensing models are addressing the same problems, and how are they changing the way we deliver computing?
Yeah, it's so you see in the last few years, right? I think back to that Bill Gates quote, 2 years versus 10, right? You've seen a lot of technological innovation, but it's also been mind-boggling how quickly licensing and consumption models have evolved to fundamentally give customers more flexibility. And I do think that started with cloud, right? And there's a lot of reasons customers went to cloud, but one of the fundamental financial reasons was the ability to pay for what you consume and not pay for what you don't. I don't have to build for a peak that most of the time I'm not going to utilize, right? And I think you've seen that philosophy start to permeate beyond cloud into software and now hardware licensing models, right? In terms of, you take an example, on our side with Meraki, how we deliver cloud managed infrastructure. You buy the box, but really the intelligence is in the software that's delivered as a service, and you access via web portal. You don't worry about versioning and patching and updating, and it's just an easy button through an easy licensing model that allows you to pay for what you use in a very simple way. And you see that evolving now where some vendors are offering hardware as a subscription, right? And we were having this discussion with somebody earlier, and the discussion was, well, how is that different than a lease? Well, within that subscription, we can actually offer you ongoing innovation in terms of new platforms periodically as they come out, and that's something we're absolutely, going down the path of. And then you look at where we've started to go with our enterprise agreement model, allowing customers to pick what they want out of our different portfolios, package one agreement around that, and with an enterprise commitment, offer growth potential, offer innovation capabilities, and just give more value and more simplicity to our customers in terms of how they manage all the complexity that used to be in the traditional licensing model.
Awesome. Anoj, we've talked about this at length, and we're still figuring this out, or at least I think I am, but I think we all are. When we perform digital transformation workshops around DevOps and big data, we deal with the impact on the customer's organization and culture. What is the biggest challenge there, and how do we at least begin to overcome it?
Sure. So I ran cloud and high performance computing for a large pharmaceutical out here in LA, and also for a venture capital company. And I will tell you, the hardest machine to upgrade is the human being, right? So the technology part of this is easy. It's the cultural change that you really hit up on. So there's actually two big challenges we had. One is, I would say, is adoption. So I know, Wes, your whole thing was, hey, build it and they will come. The flip side of that is, look, we've all been in a company that had a wiki or SharePoint or Quad that was built and never used, right? And that's not because it wasn't technically built properly, it's because we didn't know how to drive adoption to that, right? Did that actually change your experience? I mean, I'm willing to bet most of the people in the audience have a number of home services like Dropbox or Mint.com or Gmail, Hotmail. When was the last time you logged into Mint.com to check what your financial statements look like? And so we have a lot of services that we use, and people are kind of pushing new things, but a lot of times, like, how do we drive adoption? So one of the things we do, we do this workshop. We kind of call it the date before the engagement. It's a one-day thing where you can select and curate topics and kind of customize a workshop, whether it's in DevOps or cloud or big data. And we really just meet up with your folks, and so you get to know us, we get to know you, and we really dig into kind of what is it you're trying to solve. And a lot of times when we approach these problems, people are approaching them from a technology perspective. You're not going to convince an architect like, hey, VMware is better than OpenStack. They're going to fight that battle to the death, right? Where you will get agreement, though, is, hey, what are the use cases that are actually going to move your organization forward, right? Like instant data environment or automated employee onboarding. Those things you can actually get agreement around and get alignment. And so the biggest thing we actually find out in organizations is it's actually alignment, right? It's just getting all the leaders to agree on, hey, this is the path that we're going to go down. Because if the leaders don't agree, then everybody else is left to fight bloody and winnable battles. And so one of the things we start off with is, hey, can we align around something? And just going, I'm picking on Wes here, but mainly because he's on his phone. But but what Wes showed up there, that the two models of building, we're not going to go in and build some big battleship. Those days are over, right? We're not going to go and gather all the requirements and say, wow, here, let's figure out all the features. Because you don't go to a restaurant because it has the most items on the menu. That's not why you go there. You go there for an experience, right? And hey, can I get a better experience? And so what we do is, how do we get that quick win? Like, let's identify that one or two use case, get that quick win, and off the velocity of that, now we can grow. If you think about it, that's how Amazon started. Amazon started with one service, S3. 4 years later, they released EC2. But in those 4 years, they figured out the experience, like who are our consumers? Okay, they're developers. How do we build them? How do we do reconciliation, customer service? Once they figure that out, look at the velocity at which they pop out services today. Now they're pushing services out on like every 2 to 3 months, right? And so this is really what we espouse with companies. Launch those first couple of services, right? Get that experience, get that feedback, and then build upon that.
Great. Okay, we have about 10 minutes left, so we're really getting to the good stuff now. Does anyone else want to weigh in on that, actually? It's a huge topic. You're good? All right. Al, based on what you have seen, are we ready, or that you have seen we are ready, when appropriate, to put desktops in Azure or AWS? I didn't ask that right. But, okay, if so, what are the good use cases?
Okay. I think Kurt kind of nailed it earlier when he says, when that makes sense. That's an important piece. real quick before I go any further, I will say on one thing for Noj, I've seen a lot of good pieces of information come out of those workshops. I've actually taken that on our side too from a VDI perspective, and we're doing the same approach from a VDI approach. So we're doing the same thing. We're just looking for the small wins that can get the momentum going, aligning the groups together and getting them moving in the right direction, because we see that often with a lot of our VDI projects, right? It's the infrastructure team that's not super excited to do something. Well, there's other ways of solving that problem, and we just need to move forward. So thank you for that, by the way. Back to the use cases. Definitely disaster recovery makes a lot of sense, right? As we said, consume when you need it. If you don't need it, then don't use it. So disaster recovery is an easy win. Of course, burst, right? Is everything what the cloud was meant for. So anybody that needs any burst use cases. Now, when it comes to just general virtualization and putting the workloads of VDI in the cloud, definitely there are some caveats that you're going to worry about. I think networking is, of course, a big one. The performance of the applications, right? Where now it's not your data center anymore with the Citrix servers or the VDI infrastructure sitting right next to it. It's the VDI is running in Azure, and then you have your workloads and your applications, are running on premises. So definitely work into how those applications are going to perform. Do some validation, do some testing, do some POCs, and as your workloads migrate into Azure and migrate into the cloud, definitely you'll be able to take advantage of those applications much faster by having VDI in the cloud already there.
Yeah, I'm going to add one thing to that, and when you take a look at getting out and talking to people about this, you have to actually show them what's going on. And we talk about proof of concepts, and you actually mentioned POC. I would say don't do proof of concepts anymore. Just completely leave that out of the equation. Do a proof of experience. A proof of concept is not good enough anymore these days. You have to actually show the experience. So think proof of experience and go there first. It'll be transformational.
Yeah, I do have something to say about the proof of experience. So, especially when it comes to the security side, it's funny when we talk about security, because originally we used to think about it, and I think you brought this up, Kurt, as a perimeter, right? A castle with a moat around it, and those are our firewall rules, essentially, and you let the drawbridge down for specific things that are coded in your rules. That was great when we had everything in the castle, right? But now things are all over the place, and so I don't have just an application in my data center. An application is not a monolithic thing, it's a constellation of a lot of things, and so it's moving around, and it's in cloud, it's in your private data center, etc. And so we're moving to this new kind of equation for securing our applications and our data. But I think one thing that gets overlooked with security, and when I talk to most security professionals, is the experience. Right, so think about this, like, you guys have all taken flights here in the past month, I'm sure. The TSA is the worst security experience I've ever gone through, right? Like, they want to pat you down, make you take off your clothes, blah, blah, blah. It's a horrible experience, and it's not even very secure, right? Versus going into a casino where I can go and gamble, do whatever I want, but the moment I step out of line, 2 guys in black suits are going to come and escort me off the premises. Right, so that's really what you want security for your users to be like. It's almost like an open casino. You can go and do what you need to do as a user, but once somebody or something steps out of line, then it's automatically taken down, right, in a code-like way.
So our final question, 2 minutes each, guys, for Gary and Vinay, starting with Gary. Gary, you're a chief technologist for HP, meaning most of his days are spent with customers, talking through their challenges. As from what you see in those conversations, what are the top challenges, and how are you helping customers overcome that?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges that we're all going to have as IT organizations today is the legacy things that you have seem to be forgotten by analysts and people who are trying to help you. And so I've had a lot of conversations, even with some of you in the room, about how do you bring some of your people up into more architectural roles? Because the challenge is, if you still have legacy infrastructures, the Zillennials with an X back there, I got to give you the shout out, right? Those guys don't want to work on legacy transition projects. So having your experienced individuals help with what that infrastructure plan looks like, what the cloud management plan looks like, how you're going to transition to the cloud is really, really key. The other part of the equation is, as you start looking at a more hybrid model, is really deep down looking at what you're going to do. I'll give you our interpretation from our IT staff. As we look at new applications, we have a simple rule. It's zero customization. So as you start to deliver your new applications, don't be, sorry SAP, the SAPs of 10 years ago where you spend $3 million delivering against what the client experience looks like when 90% of the way is the right way to go for your organization, and then drag that person kicking and screaming that wants the other 10% to legal or HR or whoever it is that needs that functionality to be approved, and get that out of the way, make your infrastructure cleaner that way.
30 seconds. Oh, same question to you. We have like,
Oh,
in meeting with clients, what are some of the biggest challenges they have, and how are we overcoming them? So
Yes,
we've got
I'm
like a
going to
minute.
give you a totally not technical answer to that, right? I'm going to come back to digitization, which is probably one of the penalty buzzwords of the day. But I think that what we see is, everybody's trying to figure out how to move to the new world. And that means changing the customer experience and changing how you deliver value around technology. And with that, what I see across companies, Cisco included, is that actually drives a massive shift in how you run your business, right? So if I go from, parallel to the IT example, if I go from big, one-time, periodic transactions to more frequent interactions, micro-transactions, smaller interactions, smaller dollar amounts, more frequent, that wreaks havoc on how I recognize revenue, how I develop products and services, how I structure incentives, how I run my systems, IT systems, financial systems, and that's a massive transition that ripples throughout an organization and has implications far beyond IT that I just see companies trying to navigate left and right in a big way. And so I think that's something that, again, it's a bigger than IT conversation, but if I had to bet, a lot of your companies are probably navigating those waters and solving IT problems within that lens and with connection to the broader framework, I think is a huge opportunity for all of us.
thank you. Everybody, please thank our panelists. Their time is amazing, and the fact that they made the time to come speak to us is always a pleasure. Thanks, guys. Okay, so here we go. Super Bowl champion and all-pro wide receiver Keyshawn Johnson is a Los Angeles-based NFL analyst who appears on SportsCenter and ESPN's NFL studio shows. This fall, Johnson will also assume a new regular daily host role for ESPN LA 710 AM, ESPN's own radio station in Los Angeles. The top overall pick by the New York Jets in the 1996 draft, Johnson played for 4 teams: Jets, the Buccaneers, Dallas Cowboys, and the Carolina Panthers during his 11 NFL seasons. One of the most productive receivers of his era, he had 814 receptions for 10,571 yards, 64 touchdowns, and 167 games. The 3-time Pro Bowler helped lead the Buccaneers to a win in Super Bowl, the Roman system, 37. In his final season in 2006, he caught 70 passes for 815 yards and 4 touchdowns, becoming just the 16th player in league history with 800 career receptions. A Los Angeles native, he grew up near the USC campus and was a 2-time All-American at Southern Cal under legendary head coach John Robinson. He also served as a Trojans ball boy for 6 years during his youth. He ranks among USA's all-time great receivers with 168 catches, 2,796 yards, 16 touchdowns. He has a school-best 17 100-yard receiving games during his career, including 11 consecutive regular season games, still an NCAA record to this day. He led the Trojans to a Cotton Bowl victory his junior year and a Rose Bowl victory his senior year. Everybody, please welcome Keyshawn Johnson.
Thank you. Oh gosh, how do I take this off? I think I would know this. There you go. Thank you guys for coming out. Let me see if I can get this right. I'm just going to say 360 and you guys could figure out intensity or whatever that is. But what I want to do is I want to just kind of, for those of you that don't know me, I know he rattled off my career to the degree in terms of a professional athlete as well as college. But those of you who do not know me outside of sports, I am the youngest of 6 children. And obviously, I went on from high school, growing up in South Central Los Angeles, to going to junior college at West LA, living a dream and going to USC, a school that I, used to run around at, I was 7 years old. At 7 years old, I was running around USC because I lived across the street in the projects, across the street from the university, but I was basically adopted by the university along with a bunch of my other friends, and it gave me hope. It gave me life to know that I could accomplish something outside of what I've seen on an everyday life, whether it was drugs on the street, police officers, brutality, whatever you want to call it. I got over that because of that university. So I'd like to thank the university for allowing me to continue to get an education and become something successful in life. Along the way, at 7, 8 years old, I tell this story all the time, I challenge anyone at 7, 8 years old that you can find that has pitched batting practice to Mark McGwire, caught Randy Johnson, and also warmed up Jack Del Rio at the same time on the baseball team. I don't know any kid that's been able to live that dream as a bat boy, ball boy at the university. And with that being said, it gave me hopes and dreams along the way to try and become successful, like many of you that are in this audience tonight. Growing up in South Los Angeles, you don't have special privileges. It's not Beverly Hills, it's not Brentwood, it's not Orange County. It's, you know what it is, it's not very good. But because I was given the opportunity and I strive to become great, not just in sports, but also as an individual and a human being. And in this world that we live in today, so many of us on all faces of life, no matter where we're from, our backgrounds, our ethnicities, whatever the case may be, we strive to become great because that's what we want to do in our businesses every single day. I took sports as a business for me. I took care of my body because my body was my business. It allowed me to become something successful. If I didn't do that, if I did drugs or alcohol, well, I drink now, but if I did it back then, I probably wouldn't have accomplished much in my life. With that being said, I never gave up. At 11 years old, I would say 10 and a half, 11 years old, my mom lost her job, and I'm the youngest of 6 children. When you have other siblings that are incarcerated or trying to find their way, struggling in life, you try to find something else to figure out life in general. And I did that by finding USC. And as a kid, I became a ball boy. I was embraced by the university, so it gave me hope. As I went to elementary school, junior high, high school, I found my way still struggling academically because I wasn't focused. But once I got to junior college, I became focused, and I always maintained that dream in the back of my mind that one day I'll have an opportunity to run out of the Coliseum. I'll have an opportunity to graduate from one of the most prestigious universities in the world. And the only way I was going to be able to do that was maintain focus. And just like in any other businesses that I've ever had, one of the things that I tell all the people that are around me or with me every single day is if you focus on your task at hand, you will accomplish your goals. If you lose sight of that, you will get screwed, period. I don't care what anyone tells you. I don't care if it's the accountants. I don't care if it's your general managers. I don't care if it's your CFOs, whatever the case may be. If you don't pay attention and you're not focused on what they're telling you, you will fail. It's the bottom line. And I equate that to sports as well. Because if I'm not paying attention to my academics and my athletic, my coaches, and what they're telling me in terms of training and doing some of those things, I will fail. And I wouldn't have been able to accomplish becoming the #1 overall pick in the NFL draft. I wouldn't have been able to accomplish graduating from the university or becoming a Rose Bowl MVP or any of those accomplishments from a football standpoint. But one of my main goals was to make sure that I was successful and not like the rest of my peers that I grew up with that were eventually incarcerated, shot dead in the neighborhood, all of those sort of things that go on in that particular urban environment. And as I continue to embark upon becoming a successful NFL player, one of the things that I always promised to my mother is that I would graduate from the university. I had a chance and an opportunity to leave the NFL, go to the NFL my junior year of college. Short of a degree, I could have gone on and been a top 8 pick, millions of dollars, successful, all of those sort of things, but short of a degree. I took a chance because I believed in myself. I went back to school my senior year, could have gotten hurt, could have completely got just, out of the draft, the whole deal. I took a chance on myself, bet on myself. And I said, you know what? One of the things is I'm going to accomplish something that nobody else in my family has ever accomplished, and that was graduating and going to college and graduating. I did that. I did that my junior. I came back my senior year, surpassed the NFL my junior year. And a lot of people felt that I was, in this world that we live in, it's money, 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 money. So a lot of people felt I was crazy by doing it. Some people do it and it doesn't work out. Others do it and it's great. I happen to hit. It worked out for me. But along the way, I was able to give my mother my degree and let her see, hey, this is what I've accomplished. I'm the first of any of your children, of any of our major family, to graduate from an institution. And that's one of the proudest moments for me. As I continued the path of my career, I looked at it as my next step in life is to try and be successful in the NFL. I think for the most part, I felt my career went as planned. I won a Super Bowl. I was the #1 overall pick. I did everything I wanted to do. I accomplished a lot early. I went to Pro Bowls. I went to playoff games. I broke records. I did all of those sort of things. In an 11-year career, at the time I got to my 11th year in my career, it wasn't something that I wanted to do anymore. It's a thing in professional sports, in particular in football. They say a guy retires a couple years early even though he's still playing, but he hadn't announced it yet. And that's where I was at. I retired probably in my 9th year. I was checked out of the game, but I still had more to do from my body standpoint. I felt I could still play, but mentally, I said I didn't want to do it anymore. So when I got to my 11th year in the NFL, I decided that it was time to say goodbye to the game. But I had already prepared myself in year 1 for year 11. And what I mean by that is I had already started planning things from a business perspective, whether it was real estate development, whether it was owning restaurants, whether it was investing in tech companies in Silicon Valley, whatever the case may be, whether it was an angel investor in things, I had already started planning that so that I can walk away on my own terms. But all that became part of that discipline program. But there's a lot of guys in the world, not just in sports, they claim to be disciplined. And they claim to have focus and vision. And they start off one way, and all of a sudden they sway the other way. And it never dawned on them that they're doing something wrong. I stayed on a straight track. I didn't get off track. I said to myself when I entered the NFL, I had a plan. I said, I'm going to play 10 years. Everybody was looking at me like I was crazy. My first press conference is, how long you want to play? I said, I play 10 years. I played 1 extra year as a favor. I played 1 extra year at Carolina Panthers as a favor for my old offensive coordinator that was my coordinator with the New York Jets, who happened to be the coordinator with the Carolina Panthers. They needed a receiver, so I did it. But once I retired from the game, I never looked back at the game. I took a job with ESPN, and from there on, I've been with the company 11 years now, I think it is. Yeah, 11 years I've been with the company. That's, sometimes that's unheard of. It's you see guys, especially in this day and age, see guys bouncing around consistently. But I always maintained my focus. I never lost focus. No matter how bad it got, no matter how many people they laid off, I stayed in believing that I was doing my job and doing it right. I started a number of companies, from hospitality business and hotels and restaurants, to a real estate development company, to the market crashed, and as it crashed, you got to get out of here. Like, I'm out of here. I'm out. I'll figure it out when it comes back. To a sports agency where we represent current professional athletes. My brother and I own a sports agency. And one of the things that I've always said to myself, I'm not going to do anything that I'm not sure of, I'm comfortable with. I'm not going to all of a sudden go and start doing music because I don't know anything about that. But I'm going to stay right there. If it's tech, then I'm going to do tech. And I'm going to stay right there. If it's athletics, I'm going to do athletics. If it's movies, I'm going to do movies. It's entertainment, I'm going to do it because that's what I know. I'm not going to all of a sudden start trying to figure out how to get into the aviation business because somebody comes up to me and says, oh, you great, you should invest in this. No, I shouldn't because I don't know anything about it. And I'm not going to do anything that I don't know about. It's just not going to happen. And along the way, I started to build a team around me of smart individuals. And I always assessed it as looking at a professional sports franchise, an organization. How does this start? You start with the owner, then you move from the owner to like presidents and CFOs and CEOs and general managers and vice presidents of football operation. And I had a chart in my office. And each one of those, I equated it to sports, and football in particular, because that's the sport I played. And then you have, for instance, in my hospitality business, we have the owner, we have the co-owners, then we have certain investors, and then we have the managers and the regional managers, and then we have the employees that are like the players, but we're all happy and we all communicate. And in a healthy environment, that's what you need in business. And so I learned all of that along the way, self-learning, watching individuals like you out there at the age of 20 years old. When you run into individuals like Ed Roski, you learn from him. When you run into individuals like Ron Tudor, you learn from him. Those are all type of people that I rubbed elbows with at my university. Didn't know half the shit they were talking about, but I figured it out at some point. And I learned how to build that infrastructure. And I learned how to make my partners, I don't like to call them employees, I learned how to make my partners that work with me happy all the time. Because again, I never lost sight and focus of what I learned early on. I treat everybody the same. You know, I have retreats. You know, I own restaurants. I own 18 Panera Breads right now and 4 hotels. We got over, 2,300 employees in our business. I have retreats. I do all of those sort of things. I try and know everybody's name, but that's very hard. But I want to make everybody comfortable. But again, I learned that along the way. Just watching individuals, people that are successful. You surround yourself with successful people, most times, often than not, you're going to be successful. I promise you. No matter how bad it gets, if you're dealing with people successful, you'll figure out how to get out of the mud. It may take a while, but you'll figure out how to get out of it. Because all of us in business, we've had ups and downs. And those were always my dreams. Those are always my dreams, to be able to be successful at the end of the day. People said to me, they said, hey, you're the number 1 pick in the draft. You know, if you played however many years you played and you never won a championship, what would you be? I said, I'd be a guy that played football and that was it. But if I won a championship, to me, I was be successful. Because the last thing I need you guys to be talking about in your bar time and hanging out is, Keyshawn Johnson, he was really a good football player. And the next thing is, he really never won shit. I never wanted to cross that path. I never wanted to cross that path because that hunger and that desire was always there, because I never lost focus of what I wanted to do. And that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a champion. A lot of guys, if people talk about in sports, they say, you go, you play, you move, these guys just want the money. Maybe some do. But I can guarantee you a lot of them would trade that money for a championship. They may never ever tell you that, but trust me, They would, because that conversation of being a champion in any business, the number one tech industry here, there, whether it's Google, whether it's Facebook, they want to be the champion. That's why they keep creating shit. They got all the money in the world, but they keep creating because they want to be at the top. You know, Amazon's not trying. How much money, what is he worth? 900 billion or something? But he wants to be at the top. That's why he keeps going and going and going. Guys building underground tunnels and shit for what? He doesn't need to do that, but he want to be the top. No, it's the truth. He wants to be at the top. He wants to surpass whoever's there. That's the way it is. It's that way in business too. You know, McDonald's, they got 9 million stores. They keep changing their menu every other day because they gotta catch up because they want to be back at the top. They were the top many years ago well, you guys are a lot older than me. When y'all was young. When y'all was young. No, I'm just joking. But when we were young, they were at the top. Nowadays, 95% of this audience wouldn't walk into McDonald's. You wouldn't walk in. You wouldn't even give it to your kids half the time, half of them, because they're not at the top right now. You're looking for other alternatives in burgers. You're just looking for those things. But if you stay true to who you are, you can be very, very successful at what you do. And success is in the minds of people. It just depends on what you want to be. I had a conversation with somebody the other day. They told me, they said, you know, he's not very successful right now. I said, it depends on what you consider success. Depends on what you consider success. Because in that young man's mind, he might be at the top and very successful at what he does and very happy and content in his own skin. Oh, no, it's not. He's not. I said, okay. So we happened to ask the guy on the radio, do you think that you're very successful at it? Absolutely, he said. No one's ever accomplished any of these things, and he went through it and all of that. And then afterwards, when we hung up, I said, I told you so. And when you think about those things, and I think about it all the time, man, because I starve and I hunger for success. I never want to be a failure. I failed in things in life. I failed in my first marriage. It is what it is. That happens. But I rebounded and didn't bother me. I've gone on to what I consider to be a great father. You know, I think I've done a good job. But all of those lessons I learned along the way. At 11 years old, when you're sleeping in a car in trying to figure out where you get your next meal from with your mom in a mortuary parking lot because she deemed that as safe because she figures, nobody's coming over here. You learn life lessons from all of those things. And you take that with you as you grow and become older. And you apply that to your business relationships. And in your business, you learn those things. So when times get tough, you don't run. You stay there. You stay right there. And so for me, those are all the things that have gotten me here today. If I didn't do those things, I wouldn't be standing on the stage with you. They wouldn't have brought me in. They would have brought somebody else in. But because I put myself in a position to be successful, to accomplish some goals that I set for myself, I'm here in front of you today. And as things get rough in your businesses or whatever the case may be, it starts to take a dip here and there, all you got to do is just stay the course, unless it's just so bad that you got to get out. But for the most part, you stay the course and you figure it out. You weather the storm. You go back to what you learned a long time ago and apply that, and I promise you, it will turn around and you will become successful. You know, that's just the way it goes. It's the way it goes. You surround yourself with people that have the same vision and goals as you, and you will accomplish what you set out. I don't know how much longer I have. I got about 2 more minutes, but we can save those 2 minutes for Q&A if you guys would like. And it was a pleasure trying to give you a little bit of a background of who I am, what I'm about. I am, self-proclaimed authentic, and I pull no punches, and I like who I am. So thank you guys for coming out and listening to me banter for a little bit. How do we handle the Q&A session? No. No, I'm trying to think. Let me see. Dodger baseball. That might get it a little bit, right? The lineup looks like this. The Dodgers have Mariano Duncan at short. Steve Garvey is at the first base mound with Boomer behind the plate. On the mound is a young Fernando Valenzuela, a 19-year-old kid from Mexico. He's a big left-hander with a screwball. The thing that you got to understand about Fernando is when they took the offer on him out of Mexico, they made a decision in 1980 to bring him up for the minors. The thing that you got to realize here, something like that. Something like that. I like Vin. Vin's one of my neighbors. So come on, guys, don't be shy. I know you guys got some questions. Which one was my favorite team to play for? You know, I have 4 different teams at 4 different ages, or different kind of age groups. In New York, obviously, I was young. I was drafted there 4 years. Turn on the lights, let's go. It was a party for 4 years. I mean, that was it. Then I went to Tampa, got traded to Tampa, and I was still relatively young. I was about an hour from Miami, and if you've been to Miami, you know what that is. So it helped me get divorced if you know. Miami was a party, and, you know, continued to party in Miami. Got a little older, went to Dallas. Dallas was okay. It was fine. I mean, it's all right. It's fine. I could have lived there full time, probably. I mean, I'm an LA guy, but I probably could have made it there. By the time I got to Carolina, I was shot. I was done. I used to come home in Carolina after practice. You know, I lived downtown. I rented a little apartment, a high rise right next to the arena. And one day, I called one of the teammates. I go, man, what the hell is going on down here? It's like 5 o'clock and it's empty. There's nobody around. And I look down. I'm like, where's everybody at? It was completely empty at like 5 o'clock. So I waited, whatever. It was like 9 o'clock. I'm downtown. It was like, man, there's nothing down there. I'm like, well, maybe I'll just jump out of the window right now because I couldn't deal with Carolina. That might have been the worst place for me to live and play ball at in terms of nightlife. Football is football, but when you go away from the field, you still want to be able to go have some good food or something. It was the worst. Probably between the two, I would say it was the Tampa, New York that was my deal because you had all the New Yorkers still coming to Florida, and we spent a hell of a lot of time in Miami on our off days. Best defensive back I ever played against? Richard Sherman. No, I never got it. I never got a hold of Richard. I wish I could have. I would probably, oh God, man. I keep saying those days, and I'm making myself feel really old. We had what happened is, so I got drafted in 1996. When I got drafted, it was me, Terry Glenn, and Eric Mose. We invaded the AFC East. So then the AFC East coaches said, we got to get some corners. So they started going out and drafting all these guys, these Sam Madisons and Patrick Surtains and Bucky Joneses and all these guys that couldn't play. Surtain could play, Madison could play, but there was a ton of guys that couldn't play. And we took advantage of our our division. They wanted to get, because we're big dudes, 6'3". Well, Terry's a little smaller, fast guy, but like me and Eric were big. And then the Miami Dolphins had a couple big guys. So the coaches said, we need to get people to slow these guys down. They started drafting guys. And our conference had some pretty elite corners, guys like Surtain and Madison, Ty Law with New England. Buffalo had... Buffalo had a guy, I can't think of his name right off the top of my head, but he wound up going to Chicago after a couple years. But the best one I probably would face, see, I caught Dion. Dion had turf toe. He was already like toast and old. I caught James Hastings probably was the most physical guy that I faced. I mean, he was big. He was a 6'2", 225. I mean, he was like, he looked like he should have been playing linebacker, and he can run, and he was strong, and it was a difficult time to try to get away from him. So he probably was the best one, and then Dale Carter obviously was good, really, really good. But night in, I mean, week in and week out, or year in and year out, would probably be Ty Law, I would say. Year in and year out would be, you had to really work, you had your work cut out for you against Ty. I mean, I got a couple. In 98, we played in the AFC divisional title game. I was at the New York Jets. It was my first playoff game. And really, you know, Bill Parcells, it was the night before the game, he talks to me and he tells me, you know, he pulls me aside and he says, hey, you know, it's going to be a day. We're going to get you off, period. End of discussion. It's got to be you. If we're going to win, it's got to be you. And they actually did that, because sometimes coaches are so full of shit. They tell you that, and then they don't do it. You know, you've worked with people that say, hey, we're going to do this, and it never happens. You just sit there and you go, well, I thought you said we're going to be able to close that deal. Well, hey, you got cold feet, you know, that sort of stuff. He came to me and he said, we're going to get you off. You're going to dominate. And I did it. Touchdown in the air, touchdown on the ground, interception on defense, fumble recovery on defense. I mean, it was like a whole deal. They used me on defense. They really put an emphasis on making sure that I got us to the next round. And it was just, you know, it was one of the highlights, I would say, of my entire NFL career. Obviously outside of the Super Bowl, but just in terms of that was like one of the moments, the brightest moments. I mean, you unless you've actually done it, that high is just at an all-time, I mean, it's just, it's a whole nother level. And, I mean, I got all sorts of different moments in professional sports that I feel good about. I felt good about my entire career. You know, winning a Super Bowl, there's a lot of, you know, I tell people all the time, people say, well, you know, will you go to the Hall of Fame? No, I won't go. I played 11 years, and I played with like 19 different quarterbacks. I didn't play the game to go to the Hall of Fame. I played the game to get rich, and I played the game to secure my family, and I played the game to win a championship. That's why I didn't play to get a ring from the Hall of Fame. That doesn't individually, but there's a lot. I tell people this, I say, there's a lot of individuals that would trade their careers for mine, but there's not a lot of guys that I would trade mine for theirs, except Jerry Rice. He's the only guy that I would switch with. Other than that, we're all the same. Because nobody will ever be the greatest of all times except Jerry. So it's the truth. It is what it is. He's the only guy. You know, you think about these arguments in sports, when you hear in all the sports, who's the greatest, like that, you never hear anybody question the wide receiver position. You always hear them question another position. Who's the greatest quarterback? Well, who's the greatest? Is it Jim Brown at running back? Or is it O.J. Simpson? Oh, I shouldn't say that. But is it, you know, all these different, no, seriously, they say all the other positions. That's the one position that you never hear anyone question. In basketball, who's the greatest guard? Is it Michael Jordan? Is it Kobe Bryant? Oh, who's the greatest basketball player? Is it LeBron James? Jerry Rice? It's like, Jerry Rice. He's the guy. You know, and so that's the only one. Everybody else, we're all the same because we're chasing him. So, any more questions?
Why number 19?
I took 19 because at the time I couldn't wear 3 in the pros, and 3 was my college number. Our assistant general manager's youngest son at the time was in the locker room when I signed, and we were trying to figure out numbers, and he said, hey, you were the number 1 pick, and you wore 3 in college, so 3 times 3 equals 9, and you're the number 1 pick, you should wear 19. And I said, good, I'll do it. And that's how. Last question, anybody? Any shy person? Have you ever been mooned before? You know the answer. Huh? And you know the answer. No, 0. You see, you always get 1, right? you gotta get 1. You went to UCLA? Oh God. Here's a better one for you. What's your name? Steve. You look successful, right? Yes, modestly. How much you want to put on it? This year in the Coliseum, how much? Because I can get them to make sure we clear our bets. Because I'm willing to bet. I'm a betting man now. It could be 100, not 100,000. I don't want to do you like that. But it can be $100. It can be 200, 3. It can be all the way up to 1,000. Take that bet. Take that bet. Because you got the pretty boy, Josh Rosen. You know, Josh is. I was at the A&M game actually. I was at the A&M UCLA game. My godson plays at UCLA, Darnay Holmes. So, but I never beat them, and they're not going to beat us this year. And no, they're not. And you're probably going to fire Jim Moore. He'll be looking for selling his house and looking for a new job at the end of the year. Uh-oh, that must be another UCLA guy in the crowd. But we got to get our act together at USC anyway. We got a lot, we got a little bit of work to do. Just a little bit. We got a good team, a young team. And we got the right team coming in this week to give us some confidence, and that's Oregon State. So hopefully we win and we don't have to worry about, and then we got to go to Utah. Utah comes to us, and that'll be a tough task for us. But I think at the end of the day, I think the South will come down to UCLA and USC. It'll be one of those classic, crosstown rival games. UCLA with 2 losses or whatever, USC with 1, the winner takes all. It'll be one of those games again. And we'll probably beat the shit out of you 50-0. Thank you guys. See you.